It's the Get Up and Shine show, where your host Lillian Taylor brings you intimate and inspiring interviews from people who faced off with serious life struggles and prevailed. As our guests revisit with the moments, realizations, and tools that helped them break through, you might just walk away more empowered in your own life. It's that time. Get up and shine.
Hi, this is Lillian Taylor with Get Up and Shine. I thought the feud between the Hatfields and the McCoys was just a goofy little myth. My grandfather corrected me. Unmitigated hatred had dominated between these families for generations, which I found baffling. How ridiculous, I thought, that I should become angry with one of my friends if our parents had disagreed. Now, in part, that's because I had too small a worldview to understand the gravity and depravity that adults could level. The overwhelming hurt seeing a loved one assaulted or battered or even humiliated. Yes, of course, there ensues resentment. Still, at whom? In the episode that follows, Melanie Bordon reflects upon growing up within a community deeply divided by the biggest family feud of them all, race. Welcome. Melanie is a friend and a teacher from South Africa. She teaches yoga at the studio where I go to, and she told me a very interesting story, and I just thought that she might be able to share some of that. There are many aspects to it that reflect that she's dealt with some traumas, but she seems to have a really happy life now.
It's interesting to me that you say that, because I don't think of myself in that way. In a way, I think that's what helps me stay positive, not thinking of myself as a victim of my surroundings or what has happened to me. I think in a way I realize that these things that happen in life happen to all of us. We all have these experiences, and we have to move past them in a way that feels authentic and feels right, and find a way to be okay with them.
Okay. South Africa? Were you there during the apartheid regime?
I was. Mandela became president in 1994. I had just graduated high school at that time. I spent a great part of the changeover from one government to the other one in high school.
Were you a political activist?
I was not an activist. I was a teenager, busy with my own life experiences, and unaware of this history that was being made around me, really.
So did you understand when the country became far more violent after that, or the violence spread?
There was a lot of violence in the 70s. We saw some violence again in the 80s and then in the 90s, each time bringing the issue of apartheid back up again into the forefront. In the 70s, Mandela was an activist who was trying to show that what was being done to the people of South Africa was wrong. What a lot of people don't understand is the method or the way that he did it. And rightly so, it was probably the only available method to him, but it was through violence. It was through creating terror within the country.
And after the switch, the sort of violence continued across the country?
The violence has changed. It's changed from political violence for a cause to violence against all the citizens caused by poverty, and the chances are in South Africa, if you're a victim of crime, you're a victim of violence as well.
Oh. Were you privy to what was going on and it was so detached from your life that it kind of didn't matter, or were you just you didn't even know?
I was a teenager in the time, and really that was happening in the background.
It was normalized.
Exactly. It was normalized. It was going on throughout my whole life. It was something that was happening in the distance. It was interesting. It was such an historic part of our country's history, and yet I was unaware of what it was I was part of. For example, I had a nanny that would come in from the locations.
The locations?
The locations were pre-approved areas that the people of color had to live in. Mm-hmm. So our nanny, Fielder, was a lifelong friend of the family's, and the only way that she could make a living was through being a nanny And she was not allowed to stay overnight, for example. She had to commute in and out. It didn't work. It cost her extra money. So what we did is we would keep her at home at night and have to hide her away because a person of color was not allowed to stay or sleep in our area. Yeah, there are many stories like that where people that are considered white were arrested, for example, because they had people of color with them after dark. So all of these things were happening at the time. I was about 7, 8, or 9, and I look back now and realize that they were happening, but I was completely oblivious to them. Actually, not oblivious. They were normal, and I look back now and I think they should not have been normal.
Yeah. At some point in time, well, when is the first that you became aware in your life of violence?
It would have been in the early 90s when the ANC became empowered and rose up against the current government, the ANC being the party that Mandela is part of. They began to use techniques that they knew would work, threats against the schools, threats against the hospitals, civilian areas. And in this way, it began to affect me. And that's how I became aware of it. There's different violences, right? There's the political violence, and then there's the aftermath. Crime due to the whole 80% of the population being suppressed and being unable to build a life or a livelihood. So we had this beautiful period during Mandela's leadership where this heart-centered man had the ability to take a divided country and pull it together through forgiveness. And so we had this violent uprising, we had this changeover of government, and then we have this beautiful time of forgiveness and a struggle for peace or a way to find peace within two groups. And then we have a few years of what I suppose I can describe as political utopia, or the closest thing we've ever had in South Africa. And then the pendulum swings in the opposite direction as he steps out. We have, and rightly so, people demanding that they be remedied, that they receive justice for how they've been wronged or what has been wronged, done wrong against them. So we had this time when people started to take things away, to become violent because they feel that they had been wronged. And now it's their turn, whereas others have built up for many years what they have, and obviously no one wants that taken away from them either. And on the other side, the other people didn't have opportunity to create this. So we have firstly political violence and unrest in you did me wrong, that was unjust, I need to be able to at least have equality. And then we have this beautiful period of during Mandela's leadership where it's utopia and forgiveness and love. And then as he steps out, the pendulum swings again in the direction of now it's my turn. Now you step aside, it's my turn to shine.
Okay, so really competing interests. There are people who are really wanting their... So sort of like sounds like there was resentment because of opportunities that were...
Of course, yes.
Deprived, and a feeling of wanting that to be rectified economically.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and then, other people who were able to have those advantages.
Right, take advantage of those.
But they were also working very hard to build what they had and feeling a sense of lack of justice.
Correct.
Because it's very difficult to just all of a sudden have to sacrifice.
Right. So yes, they had these advantages, but they worked hard. And then on the other side, disadvantages, and they worked hard as well, but no matter how hard they worked, they couldn't quite.
They had nothing.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a hard nut to crack.
Right. It is. There's no yes or right or wrong. You can look at both sides. You can say, yes, I see, But how do we fix this? It's a really hard place to step forth from and say, okay, now this is how we fix it, because I don't believe whenever there's people involved, there's no clear way to make everybody happy. And it's not just about happy, but it's about justice, and it's about social justice and so much more.
Exactly. And maybe it wasn't my fault. Maybe I didn't approve of the system. Maybe I lived through it, but, I didn't participate in it. And so then why am I having to pay the price?
Right. Personally, not me.
Go ahead. Because you were not engaged in that.
I was not only not engaged, I think I was in a place where, yes, the violence now affected me directly in many ways, but how can you not understand where these people are coming from? How can you not understand what it is they have dealt with? So
you had sort of a peace about it, in a sense?
It's interesting. I don't know. Would I say a peace? I would just say that understanding. How can you not understand people are people, and both sides have validity? Firstly, there was a whole population that didn't have the opportunity, and now they want the opportunity. But unfortunately, the means that they get it by a lot of times, and certainly not everybody. But what we're seeing is the violence due to people that don't feel they have any other way to gain what they think is rightfully theirs. So that's on the one side. And then on the other side, there's people that have worked very hard to build this life. And yes, they had a lot of opportunity to do so, but to just lose it.
Yeah.
To lose it to whatever means. So
their blood, sweat, and tears was put into the soil. And
exactly. So I don't, there was never going to be an easy, peaceful, right way to fix this. And I think just what Mandela was able to do so well, what he was able to do so well is to see both sides and to try to pull them together. But then when he left, I feel like we lost that vision. And that's when things began to change.
So there's vision, but then there's also a methodology. Was there ever a plan in place to create a sense of balance and equality that was acceptable to everyone or close to? Was there ever a working document? Or
no. Or maybe there was, but it was certainly not something that was shown or revealed. I think maybe still they're just trying to get through, to survive, I'm not sure that there is a clear, this is how we do and how we move forward. And unfortunately, politically, every person that have stepped in after that wasn't like Mandela, who really, his idea was to bring everybody together and work together. There, unfortunately, has not been much of that after him. Okay. So I think that is probably the most important thing, is to have the right person in leadership guiding. And he was the perfect person for the time, which is why he became president.
You ultimately decided that the right way for you to handle all of this was to leave South Africa.
Right. Our decision to leave South Africa came, about 17 years ago. I was early adult. We were white in a country where now the opportunities are limited.
For white people?
Yes.
Oh,
for
interesting.
White people. Very much so. And so that, as well as the violence, was our catalyst for leaving.
Okay. I also recall a moment at a reception after graduating from law school when a colleague scolded his grandmother, then turned and so tenderly apologized to me for her racist remark. It remains a fond memory because, as part of the emerging new guard, he stood up for me, and he stood for what was right, for kindness and for respect. Clearly, we cannot solve for world peace in these few minutes, but there are some key takeaways, principles, practices, ways of walking in the world that we can learn from Melanie's experience. Most notable for me is Melanie's ability to look squarely and unflinchingly at the truth of what has happened while maintaining a sense of compassion, understanding. She divorces her own value and understanding of self from the unpleasantness of an experience, declaring, I am distinct from my experience. Rather than continuing to diminish her life with resentment, She embraces forgiveness, is set free by forgiveness. And like every other familiar relationship, it takes both work and holding tight to the goal of love and harmony. So roll up your sleeves and get up and shine. Ever thought that sharing your story might help someone else? Meet Milana Walter. Milana, tell our audience about your story your way.
Many, many times, hearing someone else's story gave me that jolt of hope needed at the time. Can your story help someone? At Your Story Your Way, we help you tell it as a short story, book, or script. No one knows your story better than you. So what are you waiting for? Visit yourstoryyourway.com.
In 2 weeks, we continue our interview with Melanie about being displaced from her country, her family, and everything she'd come to know because of violence and economic blight, about the toll of migration on health, and at least one road to recovery. Next week, we bring you a series of vignettes from up-and-coming filmmakers here for the Miami Web Fest. Yours truly has 4 works in competition there, including the theme song to this podcast. So whether you're joining us for some fun in the sun or on snowshoes, we're counting on you. All day, all week, get up and shine.
We'll return next Tuesday with more great content. Catch a preview at www.getupandShineShow.com and join the mailing list for access to great tools to help you. And remember, it's your time to get up and shine.